This West Indies teenager scored a century against Australia, then vanished from cricket forever by age 24. Subscribe if cricket mysteries fascinate you as much as they shock you. Picture this moment. March 26, 2010. Windsor Park, Dominica. A 19-year-old kid from Trinidad walks out to bat for the West Indies against one of cricket's most dangerous bowling attacks. The Australian team had Mitchell Johnson, Ryan Harris, and Doug Bollinger ready to destroy young batsmen. Most teenagers would crumble under this pressure. Adrian Barath made history instead. What happened in the next few hours would make him the youngest West Indian to score a Test century against Australia. What happened in the next 4 years would shock the cricket world and leave everyone asking one question: why did cricket's brightest young star walk away from everything at just 24 years old? Born on April 14, 1990, in Santa Cruz, Trinidad and Tobago, Adrian Barath wasn't just another cricket-loving kid in the Caribbean. He was special from the moment he picked up a bat. While other children his age were playing video games or hanging out with friends, young Adrian was practicing cricket with an intensity that amazed everyone who watched him. His natural talent was obvious, but it was his work ethic and determination that set him apart. Cricket runs deep in Trinidad and Tobago. The island has produced legends like Brian Lara, Dwayne Bravo, and Kieran Pollard. For a young boy growing up there, cricket isn't just a game. It's a dream, a pathway to glory, and sometimes the only way out of poverty. Adrian understood this pressure from an early age. He knew that every practice session mattered, every match was an opportunity, and every run scored brought him closer to representing his country. His talent was spotted early by local coaches, who recognized something extraordinary in this young batsman. By the time he was 15, Adrian was already playing cricket at levels that impressed seasoned observers. His technique was solid, his temperament was calm, and his ability to score runs consistently made him stand out from other young players in Trinidad. The breakthrough came in 2006 when Adrian Barath made his debut for Trinidad and Tobago in the regional 4-day competition. He was just 16 years old, making him one of the youngest players ever to represent his island in first-class cricket. Think about that pressure. A 16-year-old kid playing against grown men who had been playing professional cricket for years. Most teenagers would have been overwhelmed, but Adrian thrived under pressure. His domestic performances were impressive enough to catch the attention of West Indies selectors. In an era when West Indies cricket was struggling to find consistent performers, young Adrian looked like the answer to their batting problems. He scored runs regularly in domestic cricket, showed maturity beyond his years, and displayed the kind of temperament that Test cricket demands. The call-up to the West Indies Test team came in March 2010 for the series against Australia. This wasn't just any series. This was against one of the world's best teams, in challenging conditions, with the future of West Indies cricket hanging in the balance. The selectors took a massive gamble by selecting a 19-year-old for such a crucial series. That gamble would pay off in ways nobody expected. His Test debut came on March 26, 2010 at Windsor Park in Dominica. Walking out to bat for the West Indies at just 19 years and 346 days old, Adrian became one of the youngest players ever to represent the West Indies in Test cricket. The pressure was enormous. Television cameras were focused on him. Cricket. Fans across the Caribbean were watching. The Australian bowlers were ready to test this young newcomer. What happened next entered cricket's history books. Adrian Barath didn't just survive his debut, he conquered it. He scored 104 runs in his first innings, becoming the youngest West Indian ever to score a Test century against Australia. The innings lasted 197 balls and included 12 boundaries. He batted with the composure of a veteran, the technique of a master craftsman, and the courage of a true champion. Think about what that innings meant. A 19-year-old kid from Trinidad had just announced himself to the cricket world in the most spectacular way possible. He hadn't just scored a century, he had scored it against Australia, one of cricket's toughest teams, in his very first Test match. The celebration was pure joy, the kind of moment that cricket fans remember forever. The cricket world erupted with praise. Commentators called him the future of West Indies cricket. Former players compared him to legendary Caribbean batsmen. Headlines around the world proclaimed the arrival of a new star. Adrian Barath was suddenly one of the most talked about young cricketers on the planet. But cricket is cruel. That magnificent debut century would turn out to be the high point of his international career. Over the next 4 years, Adrian would struggle to reach those same heights again. The expectations after his debut were enormous. Every innings was measured against his first century. Every failure was magnified. The pressure of being labeled. The future of West Indies cricket became a burden rather than motivation. His second test, also against Australia, saw him score just 9 runs. The third test brought 8 runs. Suddenly, the young man who had looked so composed during his debut century appeared nervous and uncertain. The Australian bowlers had studied his technique and found weaknesses to exploit. The mental pressure of expectations was affecting his natural game. The struggles continued throughout 2010 and into 2011. Adrian played 17 test matches between 2010 and 2012, but managed only one more 50. His average dropped to a disappointing 26.22. For someone who had started with such promise, these numbers were devastating. Cricket fans who had celebrated his debut century were now questioning whether he had what it took to succeed at the highest level. The technical problems became obvious to cricket experts. Adrian's footwork against fast bowling wasn't as solid as initially thought. His shot selection under pressure needed improvement. The mental side of his game was struggling under the weight of expectations. These were all fixable problems, but they required time, patience, and the right coaching support. Unfortunately, West Indies cricket in the early 2010s wasn't an environment that nurtured struggling players. The team was going through its own crisis, with frequent changes in captaincy, coaching staff, and selection policies. Players were dropped quickly if they didn't perform immediately. The support systems that young players needed simply weren't in place. The lowest point came during the 2012 series against Australia in the Caribbean. Adrian managed just 65 runs across 3 test matches. His technique was picked apart by the Australian pace attack. His confidence appeared shattered. The same bowlers who he had conquered during his debut were now dominating him completely. After that series, Adrian was dropped from the test team. At just 22 years old, his international career appeared to be over. For most players, this would have been a temporary setback, an opportunity to return to domestic cricket, work on weaknesses, and earn a recall to the national team. Adrian had different plans. In 2014, Adrian Barath announced that he was taking a 1-year break from cricket. This shocked the Caribbean cricket community. Here was a player who was just 24 years old, still in his prime years, walking away from the game that had given him so much. The official reason given was that he wanted time to think about his future and decide whether cricket was still his passion. But there was more to the story than just form and selection issues. Adrian had been exploring his faith during this period. He had become increasingly interested in the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses, a religious organization with strict beliefs about many aspects of life. The demands of professional cricket, the travel, the time commitments, the focus required, were conflicting with his spiritual journey. His poor form in 2013 and 2014 made the decision easier. He had failed to score a half-century throughout the 2014 season and averaged just 20.37 runs. His confidence was at an all-time low. Cricket, which had once brought him joy and success, had become a source of stress and disappointment. The 1-year break became permanent retirement. Despite several attempts by cricket officials and former teammates to convince him to return, Adrian never picked up a cricket bat professionally again. In a 2020 interview, he simply said, "There is nothing more to my decision than simply moving on." He refused to elaborate on the specific reasons for his retirement. The cricket world struggled to understand his decision. Here was a player who had scored a Test century at 19, who had all the talent needed to succeed at the highest level, choosing to walk away completely. Former players and cricket experts tried to analyze what had gone wrong. Some blamed the West Indies cricket system for not properly supporting young talent. Others suggested that the pressure and expectations had been too much for someone so young. His retirement at 24 meant that Adrian finished his cricket career with statistics that told only part of his story. He played 17 Test matches, scoring 556 runs at an average of 26.2. He managed 1 century and 2 50s. In ODI cricket, he played 5 matches and scored 74 runs. These numbers don't reflect the promise he showed or the impact he could have had on West Indies cricket. The timing of his retirement was particularly painful for West Indies cricket fans. This was a period when the team desperately needed consistent batsmen. Players like Shivnarine Chanderpaul and Chris Gale were aging. The next generation of batsmen wasn't quite ready. Adrian could have been the bridge between these generations, providing stability and runs in the middle order for years to come. His decision also highlighted problems within West Indies cricket development systems. How does a player go from scoring a century on debut to retiring completely just 4 years later? What support systems failed? What pressures became too much to handle? These questions remain relevant today as West Indies cricket continues to lose talented players to various factors. The religious aspect of his retirement decision became clearer over time. Adrian had become a devoted Jehovah's Witness, a faith that emphasizes spiritual priorities over worldly pursuits. For someone truly committed to these beliefs, the demands of professional cricket, the time away from family, the focus on individual achievements, the lifestyle required, could become incompatible with spiritual goals. Many former athletes have struggled with similar decisions when their faith conflicts with their sporting careers. The difference with Adrian was his age. Most players make such decisions near the end of their careers, not at 24 when they should have been entering their prime years. After retirement, Adrian largely disappeared from public view. Unlike many former cricketers who moved into coaching, commentary, or business, he chose a private life away from cricket. Occasional reports suggested he was working in other fields, focusing on his family and religious commitments, but specific details about his post-cricket life remained scarce. In 2020, 6 years after his retirement, Adrian briefly spoke to the media about his decision. He appeared comfortable with his choice and showed no regrets about walking away from cricket. He emphasized that it was simply time to move on and pursue other priorities in life. His calm demeanor suggested that he had found peace with his decision, even if others couldn't understand it. The mystery around Adrian's current life adds to the intrigue of his story. While social media allows fans to follow most former cricketers, Adrian maintains almost no public presence online. He's not involved in cricket commentary, coaching, or administration. He doesn't appear at cricket events or reunions. He has successfully transitioned to a completely private life away from the sport that made him famous. Some cricket fans continue to wonder what might have been if Adrian had continued playing. Would he have overcome his technical problems and become a consistent performer for the West Indies? Could he have helped the team during their rebuilding years in the mid-2010s? Would his career have flourished in the T20 era where his natural stroke-playing ability might have been better suited? These questions will never be answered, but they don't diminish what Adrian achieved during his brief cricket career. His debut century remains one of the most impressive batting performances by a teenager in Test cricket history. He proved that West Indian talent could still compete against the world's best teams. He gave Caribbean cricket fans a moment of pure joy that they'll remember forever. His story also serves as a reminder that athletes are human beings with complex lives beyond their sporting achievements. While fans might focus only on runs, wickets, and victories, players deal with personal struggles, family pressures, spiritual questions, and life decisions that extend far beyond cricket grounds. The contrast between his spectacular debut and early retirement makes Adrian Barath one of cricket's most intriguing what-if stories. In an era of social media and constant coverage, he managed to maintain his privacy and dignity while making one of the most surprising career decisions in recent cricket history. Looking back at his career, Adrian's journey from teenage prodigy to early retiree reflects both the promise and challenges of modern cricket. The intense pressure on young players, the expectations created by early success, the mental demands of international cricket, and the personal factors that influence career decisions all played roles in his story. His debut century against Australia will forever be remembered as one of the great individual performances by a young West Indian cricketer. The image of a 19-year-old raising his bat in celebration after conquering one of cricket's toughest bowling attacks represents everything beautiful about the sport: youth, talent, courage, and the magic of cricket's greatest moments. Today, Adrian Barath lives quietly away from cricket, having made peace with his decision to prioritize other aspects of life over sporting glory. While cricket fans might still wonder about his choice, his story reminds us that success and happiness can be defined in many different ways, and sometimes the bravest decision is knowing when to walk away. Ending. Message. Sometimes the most powerful choice isn't staying to fight another day, but having the courage to walk away when your heart calls you elsewhere, even if the world doesn't understand.